In a vast landscape full of adventurers, you are now listening to the world of chaotic amateurs.
What's up, Chaotic Amateurs listeners? It is I, Bentley Michaels, or you know me as Lanston Philly Duke Bozos. Okay, so as promised on last week's wrap-up episode, we have on Dave Mitchell this week. He is the creator of The Hateful Place, and I got the chance to talk with him as of today. It was yesterday, on Saturday. As you're listening to this, it was a couple days ago now, because that's how math works, and weeks. So, yeah, it was a great talk. I had a lot of fun. We talk about, his history with, RPGs and that sort of stuff, how he developed his games, things that inspired him. He even gives you some rundowns on some of the gameplay and that sort of stuff. It was a really great conversation. I had a lot of fun talking to him. So if you're a DM or an indie game developer, or you're thinking about maybe kind of creating your own stuff, check out this conversation for sure. It's really interesting because some of the tools and stuff that he's designed for his game can actually just be used in regular like D&D and in other scenarios. And so yeah, if you don't like interviews, totally cool. We'll be back next week with more role play. But until then, here's my conversation with Dave Mitchell. Dave, say hello.
Hello to Bentley, and hello to all the listeners.
And Dave, you're in the UK, correct?
I am. I'm in just close to Warwick, so a lot of people know about Warwick Castle. So,
well, perfect setting for you near a castle. That's good.
Absolutely.
Is it raining over there? Is it rainy season yet?
It's always rainy season.
Always rainy season. Yeah,
it's not far off.
Oregon,
we're heading into winter.
Yeah, Oregon's kind of like on the same parallel with you guys. So yeah, we get rain for about 8 months out of the year as well. So
yeah. You know the score.
Yeah, exactly. So we've brought Dave on because, listeners, as you know, we're going to be playing his game the next episode. After this, we're going to start playing his game, The Hateful Place, and we wanted to bring him on and just sort of talk to him about, if any of the listeners out there are developing their own games or just making homebrew campaigns and, sort of pick his beautiful bald-headed brain. It's always nice to see another bald-headed guy with a beard, you know what I mean?
Stick together.
Yeah, we're on Google Hangout, and so when was the first time that you got interested in RPGs, tabletops, or Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever? How did you how did that sort of happen for you?
I was sort of in what we call over here, I guess, like the first wave, about sort of 1979, I think, when it sort of hit big over here with basic D&D, and loved that, and then, like everyone else, quickly got into advanced D&D, and it was just everything kind of that we hadn't seen before in terms of games. It was it was just a lot of fun. So I set up a D&D society at school, and what was interesting about that was people think, oh yeah, that's really geeky, and you'd get all the kind of the bullies, all that kind of stuff. And then there was like this kind of a tough kid called Jamie, and he joined not really because of the game, but because painting the miniatures.
Oh, cool!
Because he was into art, and he'd come in with these. He'd come in and obviously play the modules, the classic kind of modules, and he'd bring in the miniature he'd painted that week, and it would look awesome, just awesome. And we'd then say, hey, is there any chance you could, paint ours, kind of thing?
Yeah.
And because he was in the group, suddenly all the bullies kind of disappeared.
Okay.
And it was considered a kind of an okay, cool group because a kind of a talented artist kid had joined. So it sort of went from there, really, yeah.
That's awesome. I don't play, for the listeners, they know this, like I hadn't played before, so we don't have miniatures or anything like that. But has that always been sort of your thing? Do you need like a visual component so you can be like, okay, we're going here and that sort of thing? Or is that just how it was set up before and that's just how you've always played?
it's how we played it then, and I like that sort of visual. I like theatre and I like spectacle, and I like the possibilities, especially now that you're seeing online these huge computer game events and the FIFA football and everything. I think that's an area where you want kind of visual things, and you've got obviously the computer side of that on, say, D20 or something. But yeah, in that sort of the face-to-face gaming, yeah, I like all that kind of the miniatures and the terrain and stuff like that. But the great thing about these games is, as you know, is that you can play without any of that. You can just play with a pencil and a piece of paper and the dice. And
Yeah.
it's the same with the Hateful Place, and it was the same with Chainmail and D&D and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's down to, I like that, but I think it's down to the individual for their game, what they're into. And I can totally understand people who play with absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very raw and stripped down, and it's awesome. It's all down to imagination and fun.
Yeah, I actually would probably prefer a visual component, because how we started our campaign was we were all captured on a ship, and then once we got up to the top or whatever, that's when action breaks out. And then I was like, wait, where am I? And our DM like drew this top of this crappy ship. He's like, okay, it's kind of like you're here. And I was like, okay, this makes way more sense now, So I could see that being a very helpful thing, especially if you're new, but also just sort of if you're more of a visual learner as I am. I'm not.
I am too. I need that.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe in season 2 I'll break out more maps, like get some grid paper and kind of if there's going to be a big event, I'll try that. It might just help me to keep track of it myself, so they don't have to ask me so many questions. No, you're here. No, you're right here, and now you're going to move to here.
I think when I referee, I tend to let a lot of kind of mapping things go. It's like,
yeah.
I kind of take that as approach, like where you're going and you'll remember how to get back, kind of thing. Because otherwise, you could just end up with a map of theirs that looks nothing like the map they're supposed to be on, and you just go, perfect, absolutely bang on. That's exactly it's uncanny how good that map is.
Yeah, our DM Rhett was actually very kind to us when we go back, and because I'll do all the editing, and we add music and sound effects and stuff in our show. So it's like I'm going back and listening to that, and I'm like, oh, he was just super nice to us right there. He just like totally let something slide, and because I didn't catch it in the moment, I'm just like, yeah, we're doing it, and I was like, no, he was being nice to us because we don't know what we're doing.
I have a group that I do everything I possibly can to help them live, and they just end up killing each other. And it's happened in about 3 or 4 sort of different adventures, and you think, what can I do? It's like I've told you there's the door from the haunted house to get out, but you guys just keep walking back in, and there's nothing I can do about that. So, but it's funny.
Cool. I just got a message from Red, our DM, and he has questions for you. So we'll definitely get to those in a little bit. Was there ever a lull for you as far as like where you went,
huge?
No, I'm too cool for this, and then it's like later on in life you're like, wait, what was I doing? This is awesome. Like, when was that time for you?
It was massive lull. I mean, literally. At sort of 16, I go to college, I'm doing like theatre studies and drama and stuff like that. So suddenly you get sucked into that kind of Brecht and Shakespeare and Ibsen and all that. And then I went off and did that at university, and got sort of all into that. So I always kind of, I didn't really follow after 1E with D&D. I didn't really follow. I never played, even though I've got the books, I didn't play 2E or 3E or the infamous 4E or now the 5th edition. And coming back to it literally only about 4 or so years ago.
Oh, wow.
Because, and it's interesting, it was for the same reasons this time as it was the first time around, that I was kind of had personal loss, and it was a world to escape into, and it was exactly the same this time around, and for the same reasons. And what was interesting this time was coming into it And I'd never heard of Ravenloft, or I'd never heard of that series of books. I'd never heard of like the second, third, fourth, fifth edition. Traveller had changed beyond the classic edition that I sort of played, and now there was other games. There's this whole old school Renaissance suddenly out there, and the politics between these sort of Bronyards and then this sort of new breed, whatever, that I just avoid anyway. And other games like Lamentations of the Flame Princess, or Dungeon Crawl Classics, or Labyrinth Lord, or all these kind of huge things. And that's been a real sort of a revelation. And I think it's amazing to sort of come back into it.
What brought you back into it?
Again, it was that need to socialize, to start connecting with people again. And I'd had a sort of a family loss, and so I felt kind of the need to sort of escape, I think, back into that sort of fantasy world. And the group that I played in years ago is obviously long gone. So it was about then trying to find like an online group.
You didn't try to Facebook the art kid that painted the figures? You're like, hey man, you want to get back together, paint some figures?
Wow. I did actually think about trying to find at least 3 of them, but I thought, wow, they probably. I should see if they're still around. That would be interesting, I think. So,
yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe they're playing still.
I would think so. It's very, very possible. I mean, I see some of these guys on Facebook who've been like running campaigns for like 20, 30, 35 years, over there. It's amazing. I mean, that's just incredible.
Yeah. Do you prefer like one-offs, or do you prefer sort of open-ended stuff, or like sort of medium play?
I've run a lot of one-shots, but I like campaign stuff. It's interesting that I think with D&D, players get really invested in their character, and you could, they're 27th, 28th, 30th level beyond kind of thing, and they're used to that kind of way of doing things, because it's pretty much with D&D, you're not going to get killed, not really. You've got a chance of surviving.
Yeah,
a lot of these old school Renaissance games, you get killed like that every adventure. You're rolling a new character. And there's a lot of people who love
You just found a Tesseract. Bye.
That's right. Some of the things that they do is just unbelievable. You're like, oh, no, don't.
Oh, you walked into this room, you're all dead.
Oh, just please.
After like 4 hours or whatever, you get to then, you're like, oh, Craig, we made it. Nope.
That's right. It's like, oh, dear, yeah. But it's I came back into it because of that, and suddenly there's a whole bunch of amazing sort of games out there, and then after that, then I started coming up with the idea of creating my own.
Yeah, why did you? I'll just sort of, this kind of naturally goes into some of the questions that Rhett asked. Why? And you kind of answered this, but why was it a little bit more specifically like that you wanted to make your own game, and what inspired it the most?
I'd looked at, there's 2 direct reasons. One is mental health. It's a really therapeutic kind of thing
to create.
To create. There's a line in the core rule book. There is a hateful place somewhere in my mind, and so the original kind of essence for the idea was depression. Was how the darkness invades your life, and then how you start to view this kind of world. So then I sort of turned that into this therapeutic kind of game on one aspect.
Which would explain the 23 hours of darkness and 1 hour of light.
Absolutely. Everything. There's vile children in, I think, the 3rd book.
Yeah.
As these non-player characters, and that's kind of the kids you see out here on the terrible language on the public park and everything. So everything I see has gone into these.
Me as a youth. Just a filthy mouth teenager.
These kids are like 7, 8, 9.
Oh,
seriously. I mean, unbelievable. These are trash mouth kids. They really are. It's
man, that's
unbelievable.
hilarious.
So that was one reason.
Mhm.
Was to kind of to use it as this kind of escapist piece of work. But then the other reason was I backed a Kickstarter a couple of years ago of of an indie RPG, which is I won't name it, but it's doing really well. It's really good and everything. But it was kind of promoted as being like this really sort of easy kind of system mechanically to play. And I thought, okay, cool. So I got it, and I looked at it. Oh, well, this is great and everything, but it's not any easier or more difficult than D&D or OSR stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, what I need to do is, I thought, okay, I want to create my own game, but I want it to be simple enough that I can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want it to be simple enough that I can play the thing.
Yeah.
And so I looked at a whole bunch of games, and I looked at where D&D was. I looked at Pathfinder and this ridiculously huge tome-like core rulebook. You know?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm going through the stuff right now.
There you go.
I just showed Dave the player's guide, the Dungeons Master's guide, and the Monster Guide books. I'm pouring through all of it and just kind of like, okay, I got to learn all this stuff because I don't really know. So
I've got the Traveller book T5, you know, the one that was kickstarted.
Oh yeah,
and it's like that thick. It's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, I had to get it from somebody in, I think, Canada, who sent it to a buddy in LA to send it to me, and it cost like, I think, about $100 in postage and stuff like that. But you can't get that book because it was kickstarted. So it's like,
like a huge 5-inch tome.
Oh yeah,
crazy.
But the fact is, it's crazy. I just thought this is just crazy, and I looked at all the kind of systems that are around, like Lamentations of Flame Princess or Black Hack, as recently came out, kind of thing. Call of Cthulhu and all this kind of stuff. And I just thought, okay, I want a system that's easy dice, 3 dice, D20, D10, D6. Just really keep it simple. Mm-hmm. Lose 4, you know, of the dice we've had previously to keep it as a simple system. Make combat easy. It's what I really loved about the first classic Traveller, that it just said, okay, here's 15 or more. That's what you got to roll to hit. Mm-hmm. And these battles could be over, you know, like that. Mm-hmm. A gun battle in Classic Traveller, yeah, you could die in one battle. That I love. That aspect I love. You're not being deliberately nasty to people in killing them, but you're saying to listen. In D&D, you can have these great fights, and you can go kill a god or something. That's not going to happen in this game.
Or you can take forever if you can't roll worth a crap.
Absolutely right. Exactly.
That's Caleb. That's like our biggest running joke throughout all of the podcasts is that, like, I don't think anybody has rolled more crit fails in an episode than Caleb. Because he'll be hot for like one episode and do like, I think his record is 3 natty 20s. And then like the next 5 episodes, he got at least 1 crit fail every single episode.
When it happens, there's nothing you can do about it. Just like
so funny. And I think in one episode he got like recently, it's like in the last 2 or 3 episodes, like we're sort of having like this big boss battle against this, you know, this big creature that's been terrorizing the city and all this sort of stuff. And it's I think it was like 3 times in a row he just crit failed, and then like Rhett was like, oh man, because he was like trying to jump from this platform over this lava onto this other thing. He's like, and Rhett's like trying to be as cool with him as possible. He's like, okay, so here's the deal: you can like lose all your clothes and make the jump. Okay, you crit fail. Okay, so you can't. Oh man. Okay, so you're in the lava, and you can do this in order to get out, or you could do this, or you can die. And then it was like the next one was like he crit failed again or something like that. He's like, okay, you're hanging on the edge of the thing, you got there, but like you're gonna every roll that you don't get above this, your legs are basically Terminator burning out of the bottom or whatever. I felt so bad for him because he's like moving his dice tray to like different places and like trying to roll there. It's the best. It's so funny.
Maybe want to change dice. It's because they're cursed or something. It's the bad. Yeah, there's just nothing you can do. But I think sometimes certain characters are cursed. I had a character that it survived one. It's a Lamentations game. It survived one game, And I thought, oh, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend the money I got on a set of new armor, like sort of chainmail.
Yeah.
The next adventure, that character ends up in water and drowns because he's dragged down by the same chainmail armor that I thought was such a great idea in the game before,
Oh, that's hilarious. That's super funny. So you were explaining about the dice system, which was actually one of the questions that Rhett asked, why the simpler sort of dice system, and also kind of why, I'm not sure if this is necessarily true, but sort of why the lighter rule set, which you kind of explained, but fewer dice, lighter rules, or maybe not lighter, but simpler. What was so? Yeah,
the reason for that is, as we know, you've got these kind of fundamentally two sort of camps. You've got the sort of people that are in it for role, ROLL play, and you've got people that are into the game for ROLE play, in terms of how they kind of approach their role play games. And I wanted to come up with a game that basically you can create your character in maybe less than a minute. You're not going to be spending much more than that, a couple of minutes creating a new character, and use the generators in the tables in the back to put things together. And it's about getting it done so that you can start playing, so that you're not hanging around for hours creating characters and then maybe actually you don't get to play and you have to come back another time. I wanted it fast. I wanted it sort of light. I wanted combat to be sort of realistic so that actually you might want to avoid combat.
Yeah.
There are smarter ways to get through a campaign sometimes, than to just race at these things and trying to kill them. So I wanted to kind of have that as a big aspect. But what I also wanted, as well as that kind of light rule set, I wanted it to be possible to have some kind of game from one player or more. So that if you want to kind of, there's a character class called the Mapper, and fundamentally what that character does, it's one of your own regular characters anyway, but you sort of get these kind of mapping gigs where you're going to go and sort of record how many monsters are in a particular 20-mile or 100-mile area or whatever, and you put together a map based off it. Fundamentally what you're doing is you put together a map with a lot of detail that you can maybe use in a further game, or you could share with someone else so that they could actually use it and play with it. And the reason I kind of wanted just that option for a one-player thing is you see so many times, especially in America, a lot of old school players who've had to sell all their books, their D&D stuff from back in the day, because there's nobody to game with anymore in their state. And they're from a kind of they're maybe an older kind of person who's not internet savvy and stuff like that. And so we're losing all these really cool players from back in the day, purely because they've given up trying to find someone because the nearest game is maybe 6 hours away. So I wanted to have an aspect where they could sort of think, hey, something, I don't need to give up. Let me just kind of doodle some maps. Maybe some of these young kids might find it a little bit useful, or I can play these solo adventures by myself as a little kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I wanted that aspect to it so we don't lose these really cool people. Or you could play it on the plane or something like that. And then, you've got your group stuff and making your modules and stuff like that. So I wanted it to be just simple so that you could pick it up and play. Fundamentally, that was really what it was about.
That's awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I mean, way you explained it and way that Caleb has explained it to me, it's I think he's really going to try to see. I think his goal is to see how quickly he can kill us.
Okay, yeah, that's easy.
And so, because he was telling me about it a couple months ago, and I resonate with what you said as far as the creative thing and that sort of thing, because I'm recently divorced, and so we were playing at my old house, and now I'm in my apartment, and we kind of finished it here. Cool. And I noticed that I write a lot more music. I mean, because you just have so much free time on your hands. So it's like I'm writing more music. I'm creating more stuff for my voiceover stuff, creating new reels, doing new projects, doing all, because it's kind of like if you sit alone with your thoughts too long,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm terrible for that. Yeah, I'm terrible for letting the monkey chatter.
Yeah, exactly. Another one of the questions Rhett had for you was like, what was maybe a favorite book or a set of books that you liked growing up that maybe have influenced the game?
Yeah, that's a really good question. On the fantasy side of things, I think again around that period of like being a teenager and getting into D&D and stuff like that, I was into the Michael Moorcock, the Elric series, very definitely. I loved that character so much, more than his other characters, because of this thing, the whole magic thing. Without the magic, he's so weak, and then the sword that's going to give him all this power and just takes away everything from him. I mean, it's such a brutal cycle of stories. But also, I was born in Birmingham in England, and I was born in a place called Moseley, and it's where Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, lived as a kid.
Who's that?
And it's J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. You know that bloke. He became, I don't know, he did something. I don't know. You might have heard of him. But he lived in Moseley, him and his family, and in the next town as well, King's Heath. And he based a lot of the stuff from The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings on places in Birmingham. So the two towers, the Twin Towers, are placed. They're in Birmingham. They're an old mill and a water mill. So Lord of the Rings as a kid, I consumed it in like about 3 days on holiday. I just absolutely loved it. Thought it's fantastic. So
and that's cool too to know that stuff. So it's like you almost kind of have like, you can take that visual and then try to like imagine it more fantastical or whatever, Yeah,
I mean, definitely so. I mean, influences like that. And I was a huge comic fan as a kid, Marvel, DC, I just loved them. And when they came to the UK, when I was like really young, it was just a revelation, all this kind of cool comics and cool characters. So those, and also anything to do with horror, Italian horror, Dario Argento, Lucio Fulci, especially. Those are major influences. John Carpenter, Toby Hooper, the George Romero, definitely. I think any of those are big influences, and Hammer horror. But I've always been a big fan of that kind of stuff. So I think those are the major ones.
So when you're deciding to create this game, and this is for maybe anybody who's interested in doing this sort of stuff, what was your process initially like? I've got this idea for this thing, so I'm going to just start writing down a story, or how does that work?
What I did, I came up with the name, first of all, because I knew I wanted, I knew where the name came from in terms of therapy or fantasy kind of thing. And then it was about, okay, what do I want from this game? Okay, I want it to be simple. Therefore, I'm just going to have 3 dice. And I'm going to have a really simple combat system. Because fundamentally, it's about action. Everything's about action, isn't it? Combat's going to be part of that. I'm going to have a reduced character class as opposed to the thousands of character classes that suddenly turned up since I kind of came back to gaming. It's like, where did all these character classes come from? It's like Dragonborn. What's this? It's like
I'm having a blast. Like I just pulled a bunch of pre-gen character sheets that are all basically the same level as like where we're at. Because I leveled this up to like level 7 because I think we were at 4 or 5 or something like that. And so I was like, it's been a year. We're all level 7 now. We can do some crazier stuff. There could be bigger monsters now and that sort of stuff. But I just pulled like all these I found some websites and pulled it. And so like I'm going through like figuring out which person is going to do what in the story and that sort of stuff right now. But I was actually really surprised on some of these websites. I was like, holy crud, there's a lot of stuff. And then I like kind of read through each one of them, and it's a lot more. I mean, granted, it's also in all the books and stuff like that, but I tend to dive in first and then go back and make, I should probably read the rules.
Yeah. I mean, it's this is why I think light rules are good, because it's like some of these books that are out there, you could spend a lifetime just reading the rules, and you've got people who love rules. I mean, I get that. There's X percentage, or maybe 70% of gamers. They love all that sort of the mechanics and the dice and da-da-da-da. And some games, things like Traveller, are even worse because they're made up of fans who are maybe ex-astronauts or airline pilots or engineers or tech guys, and they know all that kind of tech stuff. And Yeah, sometimes
They're
that's
like, I'll fix all the problems with another 500 pages.
exactly. There you go. You've got you exactly. I mean, whereas I think you can actually just. I guess I prefer the side of coming from like drama and theatre and stuff like that. I always preferred naturally the sort of role ROLE play aspect of it. I love
Yeah.
I play. I think I've run some games where there's maybe been one battle or one minor skirmish, and that's been it for the entire 4-hour session because it's been about doing other things, be it puzzles or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And trying to sort of get the characters to sort of escape a city, and by doing it the smart way or things like that. But I like that sort of aspect of character because I think that's a lot of fun in the game for me personally. So that's really why I think, okay, keep the rules as light as possible so that you can focus on this other thing, but then make sure that the world in which it's existing is interesting enough. Because I mean, you look at the worlds that Gary Gygax.
So how did you develop? How did you develop your world? So you have like the sort of basic rules. You know, you want the fewer dice. You want it easier. So how did you start to develop your story and that sort of stuff?
I wanted it in a dark world. I then had the idea that suddenly this sort of darkness had descended upon the world for 23 hours of the day, and with it would come all these horrors. With it, it would sort of reawaken monsters that existed. It would bring demons with it.
Oh,
It
cool.
would destroy society fundamentally. But what the game is, it's an alternative reality. So you can set it anywhere. I like this aspect of just sort of saying, you want a sort of Cthulhu thing in the 20s. Okay, set this in the 20s. If you like the sort of the Civil War aspects of, say, Lamentations or Dark Albion with the Tudors, 100 years before, hey, set it there. That's absolutely cool. If you're going to set it in 1945, the downside is the Nazis won. And not only that, they've got all these demons favoring them now, and they've got these monsters. And by the time you get to the third book, book number 3, then you're into a whole different, much darker deal of flesh markets and flesh trading and flesh as a commodity and stuff like that. And you realize that your characters, they're in a really, really tough place, whether you're a fighter or a magician or a believer or a profiteer. You're in a really genuinely tough place now. But you can survive it. I ran the playtest of a module that's coming out next year, No Rabbits and Rabbit Wood. And I just had 2 players and 4 non-player characters. The non-player characters all got killed, so did one of the players. But the other one got through, survived, rescued the princess, got a big reward, and is set for the next one. So it can be done. But you've really got to remember you're in a very dark and nasty world, and in one full step and not only does your character die, but if you fail a saving roll, you lose your soul as well.
Oh, wow.
So seriously, it's like, and that's sucked into the darkness with the demons and evil for all time kind of thing. But you can survive. You can do it, but you've got to think very, very carefully.
Yeah, that seems to be the theme that I'm noticing, even when you want to play with your. So I'm getting the inside scoop because I'm not going to let them hear this before we play, and no, this will be out on Monday. But so using your brain a little bit more, doing a little bit more of the role playing rather than the dice role playing type of stuff, and really trying to think through situations. Yeah, I was into. Because I grew up in theater as well, and I was an AV kid, and I still am. And I do voiceover, so it's like that's what it is. It's it's all character based. You have to analyze the script, you have to know how to talk, all this stuff. And that was all probably. I mean, I was the funny guy. Because I'm also a stand up comedian. So like my character is this little 3'2" wizard gnome named Lanston Philly Duke, and he called everyone Bozo a lot. But like he was always the sort of levity. But I noticed like as I started playing him, as we started getting into like more of the teen episodes, I realized I was starting to like think more about things and like, oh, well, what about this or what are that, and obviously just because I'd played, for now 30 plus hours or whatever, once we were into the, teens. So it's like, it's definitely a change in my playing. And I started to prefer, sneakier or trickier ways, like trying to figure out like, okay, how can we, like a Rhett would give us a puzzle and I'd start thinking outside of the box, like, well, what if we did this thing or so that's good to know. I'm going to see if I can throw a monkey wrench in Caleb's trying to kill us stuff. Like, roll for underground tunnel that no one knows about, that sort of stuff.
I mean, it's interesting that sort of with the play test of No Rabbits and Rabbit Wood, it had more combat in it than I think the previous 10 games of different systems I've run.
Oh, interesting.
It's because it's so easy just to run. You're fundamentally going into an underground cavern in which there's been a whole load of other people going in, which have failed fundamentally in their mission.
Yeah.
And are trapped in there as well. So you're kind of like flying into someone else's previous game in many ways.
Gotcha.
But again, that was the one that someone survived. So yeah, it can be done. I don't like sort of games where you're just killing all the characters all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Or at the same extreme, they face no problems whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think I've got one character left from back in the day, and he's retired. He's a 21st level druid.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was looking at. I was making a druid because I'm going to do a bunch of NPCs, but then I think there's going to be about 2 characters that I play as the DM that kind of like show up more frequently. So I'm actually sort of building them up a little bit, and then hopefully if they stick around, when we rotate again for the 3rd season, I definitely want to play the little druid guy. I think he's a gnome again. I like gnomes; they're hilarious to me.
The hateful place is human only. I've got rid of all these kind of different sort of races. I think because of the Hobbit films.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to do with that. It's like it left such a negative impression. I never wanted to see another dwarf or elf or hobbit again. Seriously, right. So it's like now they can go. I'm not having them in this game.
Yeah, exactly. How did you go about? Because I'm trying to remember this because this was said to me several months ago. But like you kind of modded like the wizards and it's like you only have so much wizarding power or something like that.
No, that was in the original playtest. Yeah, that was very much what it was. But the way that it developed is that there's a price to be paid for magic.
That's what it is,
and it's a big price. Okay. And it's in the first playtest. It's like there was a 5 in 6 chance of every spell failing and killing you as well. It was really extreme, and I thought I sent it out to play testing for a lot of people, and I thought actually that's far too much. So I made it, I think, like a 1 in 6 chance that something nasty would happen. So if there's a fireball spell, there's a 1 in 6 chance it's going to torch you as well.
Oh, gotcha.
So and there's only 10 spells that you can learn, and you get to choose 5.
Oh, okay.
Or you roll. So you roll to decide which 5 you've got. And the idea is that fundamentally with great power comes great responsibility. But also what you're looking at with these magicians, because both the magician and the believer class, the more religious-based class, the magician, it's really, they get the magic and they use it really for profit. The believers, they use theirs for, cultish or religious reasons, whatever. But the idea is that fundamentally, these characters are time bombs.
Mm-hmm.
These guys, with all this magical ability, they can't be trusted. They're extreme. Mm-hmm. Some of these believers are as extreme as the Puritans, of Solomon Kane's day. They were not nice people. They were extreme. They were going around hanging people all the time, mainly women. So in this harsh post-darkness world, these guys or women with these kind of these spells are nasty, and you can just use them. I mean, you can use them you can use them once, but you take not only the potential to fail the spell, but you get I think there's a 10 hit point cost for using each
wow.
spell.
That's and that's what it was.
That takes a week to recover.
A week, holy crap!
But the upside is that with the hit point system, what I went for with the hit point system is because it's like, to me, D&D, 4 hit points for a first level magician, magic user as it used to be, or something. That's no good. They're going to get killed in the first game.
Yeah,
I let them roll in such a way that you decide your hit points to begin with, and you can get. I think I think for rolling hit points, it's the body. You get basically 3. You get this mind, body, and soul. I got rid of a lot of the kind of the whole dexterity constitution.
Yeah.
I don't like that kind of aspect in games. So I just went for mind, body, and soul. And these spells, you roll what your attributes are with 3d6, and then you add an extra figure, and you can get like sort of maybe 30, 40 points. To start off with. You don't get any more than that. But that's not bad, and all the weapons basically do the same damage. It's like 4 to 40 hit points.
It's just harder to recover, it sounds like.
40, 10. If you get wounded, because monsters have got potentially a maximum of 50 hit points. Demons have got a maximum of 100 hit points. Now that's a lot.
Yeah.
But if you've got a weapon that's doing 4 to 40 hit points of damage, that's standard right across the board. Because to me, you get a knife, you stick it in someone's neck, hey, you've just done probably about 40 hit points of damage. You haven't done 1d6.
Yeah.
That guy's dead. That guy's seriously dead. So that was the kind of mindset I approached that with. Really.
A little bit more realistic. Yeah, because it's like... there's sometimes like where I would natty 20 and I would firebolt somebody, and they would be like, if it was sort of a bigger thing, like, oh yeah, it took a lot of damage, but they're still kind of kicking. But then there was like one time I got a natty 20 and I firebolted a guard like right in his chest, and they're like, well, you killed him. And I was like, yeah, okay, now that makes more sense to me. So that's kind of cool how you basically this whole game. Is you trimmed a lot of the fat. You just kind of you made it, and absolutely. it sounds like the way I put it, how it made sense to me, and I don't mean this insultingly. It seems a little bit more like paint by numbers, like where you can really, this is this, this is this, this is what you do, and now you've got the game. It's
not. I wouldn't paint by numbers. I wouldn't describe it as that, but I kind of know what you mean. I think it's more about. Saying to people, hey, look, you want a game? I tell you what, it's a bit like maybe one of those teppanyaki restaurants where you sit in there and you watch the really kind of cool Japanese guy with the big wok, and he's got all that meat, and he's got all the Korean kind of thing, and they're putting all this great stuff in, and you think, wow, this is amazing, because with this game, not only can you create your own characters, you can create your own modules as well.
Oh, that's awesome, yeah.
And that's really the key. You get about sort of 4 basic descriptions, but the generators allow you to create your own adventures as well.
How'd you come up with that idea for the generators? And was it just simply like, I want someone to be able to play by themselves type of thing, or I want them to be able to have this, and it's not just like, okay, well, I bought this D&D thing and it's going to be the same adventure. Like you wanted to have like multiple uses but possible different outcomes type of idea?
Hugely so, yeah. I think there was 2 sort of sets of thinking for this, and it's like, okay, with these books, I recognize I'm trying to break a new game idea into a really sort of crowded market. Mm-hmm. But I also want to have another use for the books, which is to have all these generators. I'd found from writing a module previously that I released that I'm pretty good at putting these tables and generators together. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I can sell more books if I have a whole bunch of generators and tables that they can use for D&D or Lamentations or Dungeon Classics, whatever, which people are doing, which is cool.
So they're taking the things that you've designed for your game, and because they're not as specific to you, they can be like, I can generate within this world of Dungeons and Dragons or whatever.
Absolutely.
That's awesome, man. Totally. Very smart.
Well, it was deliberate. So, I mean, fundamentally, look. I mean, I don't. I don't kid myself. I'm going to make as much money as Wizards of the Coast this year,
Right.
or maybe any year. But I want people to have fun with the game. I think we've all played certain games where it wasn't a lot of fun, and you think, that's kind of not why I, wanted to spend my evening or my day or whatever kind of thing.
For us, it was like we call it the goo episode. We hadn't had combat in a while, so Rhett was like, we fought these weird like goos that like split apart, but he realized about halfway through where he was like, oh man, I made this too hard because they keep splitting up and now they've got too many of them and so it just ended with the goos retreat from you. And like we talked about it on our wrap-up episode because we did a wrap-up of the season, all are some of our favorite memories, and he's like, okay, now that we're done, I think we can all admit that was the worst episode. I was like, yeah, I didn't want to say it at the time. I was like, is this bad? I think this is bad, right? So that's cool that you're taking that approach to like, if they don't want to buy your game, at least like maybe it can also become just like another tool as far as like the generation, that sort of stuff for DMs and that sort of thing.
The third book, I think there's 50 pages.
Oh, cool.
Of generators.
That's awesome.
I mean, yeah. Just because it's number one, it's just fun and it's useful. And yeah, I just want fundamentally. People say to me, "Oh yeah, I use the tables in my game last week." No, it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome, man.
That's awesome. You know what I mean? I wanted a little bit. Another reason to do this game is I kind of, you get to that sort of stage in life and you think, so if I dropped dead tomorrow, what would I have left?
Yeah.
To the world? Yeah, not much really. So I sort of thought, okay, I'll make this game so that, even if a couple of people play it, I think actually that's okay. If a couple of people, if they've had fun playing it, that's pretty good. That's okay. That's enough for me.
Has it been doing well? Has it been selling well, or? I mean, it must because you keep making new books and stuff. I wouldn't imagine that you'd be doing that if people weren't buying it and stuff.
Well, no, that's another interesting sort of point to raise because that's about the actual process. Mm-hmm. And for people that are looking to get into this kind of thing and release their own ideas, there's options obviously available. And the self-publishing, like sort of lulu.com, that's the route I went. And the reason I went for that route is because it doesn't cost you anything to actually make the book.
Right.
You just simply design your book in however you do, save it as a PDF, and you've maybe got an image for your cover and your back, and you just put it into their system, and bada bing, that's your book. Doesn't cost you anything. So,
and they just print on demand type thing?
And they print on demand, absolutely. It's not like I'm sitting here with like 5,000 copies around thinking, oh my God, how am I going to sell them?
Yeah.
Although I would definitely like to move to a point of getting them published.
Yeah.
And the idea is to get them out to more sort of friendly local gaming stores and to make them available, not just online. But to begin with, it's a brilliant system to do it because, most of us just don't have any money to be doing these things.
Yeah.
So it's there. We're happy with it. And also, we're in control of the product.
Yeah.
That's a really great thing, I think.
We've got two local stores that after we play it, maybe, I went in there to buy dice. Like, I don't necessarily come off as the type of dude that would play. Caleb sold it to me on a podcast called Sneak Attack, which is a D&D homebrew podcast. Mm-hmm. He goes, you'll like it. They do voices, and it's all improv based. And I was like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And I listened to whatever 80 episodes, and I just came back to him. I was like, is this what D&D is? Like you make up crap and you do fun voices? He's like, well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's other stuff, but I was like, dude. And he goes, you want to start a podcast? I was like, yeah, of course I do. What are you, crazy? This sounds hilarious. I was like, if I would have known this is what I would have hung out with those guys in high school rather than be like nerd. And that's coming from the theater and AV kid. I was like, Dungeons and Dragon nerds.
That's right. He says in his tights doing Hamlet. He's like, yeah, right.
Yeah, and then afterwards, I was going to my tap dance class, and
that's right. Yeah.
And I'm just like, excuse me, I have to put on my tap shoes now. Dorks. And but yeah, I'm super into it. So I think that I would love to once we get I would love to go down there and maybe I'll drop them off like some stuff and see what they think, and then because they're locally owned, so it might be something where they would be able to. And then, if they're interested or whatever, I could put them in touch with you or just,
Yeah. I think that'd be fantastic because I recognize that. I mean, you probably know, but over here in the UK, it's suddenly, again, returning to it. It's everywhere's Warhammer.
Okay.
Everywhere you go is just Warhammer. Games Workshop obviously is just Warhammer these days, and D&D 5th edition. It just seems like that's the only two games that people are playing.
Yeah, we play
on the mainstream level, and a Pathfinder, of course.
Yeah.
But there's obviously a lot of other games coming through. There's some amazing sort of game designers out there as well. So I believe in the product. I believe in the game. I think this is a cool game. I think it's a really simple mechanic.
I'm super stoked to play it.
I mean, it's in terms of damage. Look, just as an example, we were talking about spells. I'll give you just a quick one. This is fire. This is the equivalent of, I guess, what would be the fireball in Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
And it says the madman's spell of many colors. Fire is both the ender and creator of wars. The caster can create fire covering 1 mile and with a temperature of 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, causing 2d20 times 100 damage to anybody caught within the fire radius. Fireball as a weapon is 4d20 damage.
Wow.
Now, the cost for that spell, the caster has a 1 in 6 chance of receiving 90% burns, causing 10d20 damage, and a further 1 in 6 chance of blindness. You can't just put a 15-year-old kid in a sports car and tell him it's okay for you to go drive on the highway. Do you know what I mean? They've got to have a responsibility of learning.
Dude, that's bananas. That's cool. Yeah, and that kind of goes to your point of like making you think outside of the box rather than just fireball.
Absolutely, yeah. It's got to be because otherwise they're just going to get themselves killed. But it's great. Look, there's a spell called Kill, and you can kill anybody. Unfortunately, 5 days later, you die.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there's no way around it.
That's awesome, dude. It's almost like you're taking the life force, but in order to do that, you have to give yours in order
Absolutely, yeah.
That's
you can't
awesome.
give people that kind of power and let them get away with it. Yeah, for sure.
Lord Voldemort would have made several different decisions. Oh man, I think it's also really interesting too, like how a lot of, and I saw this. I lived down in Los Angeles for about 3 years. I was going to music school about 11 years ago, and I knew a couple just because you down there long enough, you're gonna run into actors, you're gonna run into people you recognize, and I just happened to be friends with people that, and both of them played, and I was like, you play Dungeons and Dragons? He's like, yeah, I've got a game with like this guy. And I was like, you play D&D with like that? I think maybe one of them was Elijah Wood too. Like I can't remember all of the names, but
right, cool.
But and then now like Joe Manganiello, the big buff guy, he's been playing since he was a little kid.
Vin Diesel,
yeah.
And they're Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, and they're like doing like video stuff like with like where it's like kind of celebrity D&D, which is crazy because they're like they all know their stuff so well. Like I think it's the Wizards of the Coast specific. I'm going to look on my phone. Their podcast. What's it called?
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Dragon Talks.
Nice.
Dragon Talk, an official Dungeons and Dragons podcast, and I just re-listened to Joe Manganiello's episode, and like. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. He plays, but like he's with the people that work for Wizards of the Coast for D&D itself, and he's like spouting all this old school stuff, and they're like, oh man, I forgot about that. And they're like, holy crap, you had that book, or you had that little module. That's so rare. And he's like, yeah dude, and like he's like getting into it and all this stuff. I was like, That's so cool because I had to listen to podcasts and I had to listen to like interview stuff, like because they've got a lot of cool stuff where they give like player tips on that podcast and all this sort of stuff. I was like, I need to learn all I can before, so I don't make a fool out of myself, playing for the first time. What are some games that you're playing right now? Do you have a D&D campaign you're in, or any video games or anything like that you're playing?
Video games, no. I used to back in the day play sort of, I think, Res Evil, but I only got it to, I think, about Res Evil 3.
Okay.
And a bit of Tomb Raider, but I was terrible at that because I just couldn't do those puzzles. They were just way too hard. Games, I'm about to run The Village of Homlet for some players who haven't played that before. And that was the very first module that I think I played as a player back in the day. And it was the very first. That was the first. Well, that was the first one I refereed. I dungeon mastered, and I think Keep on the Borderlands would have been the first one I did as a player. So I'm going to run the Village of Homlet, which I'm really looking forward to because I think it's just such an awesome classic D&D module. I'm also running a sort of a homebrew thing. Ash versus the Hateful Place.
Oh, cool.
So that's going to be obviously a lot of Evil Dead, and
that's super cool.
It's going to be nice. I'm looking forward to that. That's the Christmas game.
Rhett would love to be in on that because I know Rhett loves Evil Dead.
Oh, definitely, yeah, for sure, yeah, It's good. I think it's going to be really cool. So yeah, definitely. So yeah, I'm always looking for players for games because it's amazing how tricky it can be getting players for games. Because people are busy these days. But so I'm doing that, and I've also got I'm basically at the moment working on the 3 books to be released next year. That's taken a lot of my time because next year there's a book called it's called Hateful Places, and it's an A to Z of English villages.
Okay.
Spooky villages, so it's stuff that you can, obviously there's all the history of them and all that kind of stuff. But you can probably use it for you can use it for D&D games and stuff like that. So there's those. How
long does it take you to write a book, on average?
It depends. The actual original book 3. Let's have a look. The core rule book and book B came out beginning of January, and then it took me till the end of July to release the 3rd book. But the 3rd book is much bigger than the others, and there's far more in it, and all the generators. That's the end of the kind of the rule books because I wanted to start then releasing modules and stuff like that. So there's the No Rabbits and Rabbit Wood that'll come out next year.
That's awesome.
Hateful Places, plus a mystery book, which I can't. Although the eagle-eyed on Instagram, if they saw the post today and they looked very closely, I kind of accidentally gave it away.
Oh, okay.
What the mystery book is, I'm really hoping that nobody spotted that because that's.
Well, now I'm going back and looking.
This is gonna be like
So it's like it's a Sherlock Holmes mystery type thing.
No, it's something. It's a book from history.
Okay.
That's all I can tell you, but you'll figure it once you look at that Instagram. You're going to know.
Cool.
And so those are the 3 things for next year, and then hopefully the year after that, there's one called Pop Pop Tokyo Boom Boom, which is a kind of a really crazy cyberpunk Hateful Place module.
Oh, that's badass, dude! That's so cool.
Which is all of Tokyo. It just takes place in all of. You get a choice wherever you want to be in Tokyo. So, yeah. So because of that, I can only really sort of referee or dungeon master maybe once every couple of months or something like that. At the moment, I ran a game I think about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, cool!
And they'll just be. That was the No Rabbits and Rabbit Wood. I'll do the Ash versus Evil Dead for the Christmas game. Ash versus the Hateful Place for the Christmas game. And that'll probably be all I've got time for sort of this year. And next year I just want to be running just the Hateful Place games. And as well as also the D&D classic modules. I mean, I think I've got them all upstairs. I mean, and it's on some of the Facebook groups, you see the original guys that have wrote these things, and they're still hanging around in the communities, and they're still excellent and awesome and saying cool stuff. So you think, I've got those guys' work upstairs, you know. I want to get these out because they're such awesome, you know, Ghost Tower of Inverness, or you know, you name it. There's just so many great D&D modules from back in the day, and I'd love to run them again because it's just been forever.
Mm-hmm.
And introduce hopefully like a new generation of people. I really like the idea of getting new people to play these games, and we're seeing it. The New Yorker article, I think you probably saw this week, about the so-called resurrection of Dungeons and Dragons. It's like, it's really back into the mainstream fantasy gaming and social gaming, and we're seeing more and more people now that want to sort of disengage from just their phones or their internet, whatever, and they want to go to cafes or restaurants or whatever and get back and play board games or role-play games and stuff like that. So I think that as a creator and a player, it's a really exciting time now to be involved in the whole world of gaming. And I think if it brings people together, a classic old thing, you know, but if you meet someone, you know, at a local gaming club, whatever, and it's positive for you, then that's just awesome. You know, there's a lot. It's a really lonely world out there.
Yeah.
You know? And being social and getting out, and just having cool times, I think really is the way to go for me.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering, like, when you play those older modules, two questions. If how do you approach it, having played it, and also having now, I know you said there's a lot of like new people and they don't know them, especially if there's, you know, if they're from like that sort of original run. But like, if you have a player that's played it before, or like, is that like a hard or weird thing? And then also, do you update rules, or do you just go by the rules of when it came out? Yeah, good question. First of all, I always go by the 1E, okay. You know, or just AD&D as it was, you know, called. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I keep those rules. I think pretty much everybody, especially from that period, have played those modules like 1,000 times. Yeah.
So it's like, but as Gary Gygax said, it's like you don't ever run these things exactly as written. Right. You know, you make that module your own. You know, I think that was always the key and people still say now, is that, you know, read the module, read it backwards and forwards. Like Robert De Niro rehearsing a role, you know, they say like he runs the script backwards, forwards, so you can just then throw it away. Mm-hmm. I think it's the same with these modules, that you're going to have to replace so many things and move so many things in terms of tricks and traps or monsters or whatever, right, because people are going to be expecting it. The great thing now, I think, is that what people didn't have back in the day that they do have now are sort of books with generators and tables, so they can just roll and create something in the same way they can create like a non-player character. They can just roll things to drop back in and replace them in these modules. And that's really awesome, because then it doesn't matter how many times you played that module, you don't know what you're going to walk into.
That's cool. Yeah, because we were playing, there's like the basic 5e D&D module. You get like the beginner's module, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And Caleb and I were playing it with another guy that we were going to start it with, this guy named Mike. But we just kind of like, we played for like 2 hours one time. And then I started listening to some podcasts I found. And like, I noticed like halfway through this episode, I was like, well, why didn't they just do that? I was like, oh, wait, they're playing the same module. And then I was like, okay, we can't play a module on the podcast. Other people are doing it. We got to get a homebrew thing. And then so I texted my buddy Rhett, and I was like, hey, do you play Dungeons and Dragons? And he goes, I never thought I would get this text from you. Yes. What are you doing? You know?
He was like high-fiving.
I was like, well, we're, you know, yeah. I was like, you know, we're trying to, because he podcasts and all that sort of stuff. So, and I had him on my paranormal podcast, and so I knew he could talk, and you know, he'd be great, and he's a very good improviser and in the moment. And so I was like, do you DM? And he's like, yeah, I do that a lot, actually. He was like, excellent.
Yeah,
start writing, kid. Start writing. Yeah. So as we're wrapping up here, where can people find you online? Website, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. Where can they get your book? All that sort of stuff, and then just make sure to email it to me, and I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, cool. Yep, the Hateful Place is available mainly on lulu.com at the moment. There's a small group on Facebook. On Instagram, it's _hateful_place. On Twitter, it's the Hateful Place. That's sort of where it's at the moment. And people can get me on Facebook just as Dave Mitchell.
Cool. And you, anybody wants to, they can on Facebook, they could contact you, talk to you more about maybe game development, that sort of stuff. Do you give advice to people?
Oh, always happy to do that. I mean, look, I'm no expert, absolutely not. But what I have done is I think I spent about sort of 2 or 3 years basically looking at every other system that was out there, and seeing, okay, is this what I am personally looking for in a game? What do I like? What can I do without? And I found that I could do without 99% of it. So and then come out with a product that you're really happy with on a personal level, that you're really going to want to sort of run with. Because if you don't believe in the idea, no one else is going to. Yep. And I think that initially there's going to be a lot of people out there who are disparaging. You'll encounter that, who just want to be trollish and negative in the world at the moment. Unfortunately, you just ignore them and you just sort of say, look, this is a cool game. Just focus on the game. Just get that out there. And I think, just get to know people on places like Facebook. It's amazing how many game creators are out there, and or go to the conventions. I only really get to go to UK Game Expo because it's like about 20 minutes from drive from my house. I'd love to be able to get to sort of Gen Con and places like that and meet the incredible amount of gamers that there are in the States. So it's always, social networks, online, get your idea out there, I think, and really just run with it. And I think it's amazing how kind of you'll get a lot of people really supportive, but play test your product. Yeah, that's the real key thing. Is because there's a lot of things in the initial playtest. The initial playtest document, I think, for the Hateful Place was about 11 pages. That's all it was. And I took on board what people said, as well as other ideas I'd sort of had or rethought, and then expanded it. But having people that you trust, get them to playtest it, and you'd be amazed. I've read other people's ideas they sent me, and some of them are like totally over my head. And I'll say, this is totally over my head. You need someone much smarter to kind of talk to about this one. Or I'll say, okay, I think this is cool, but I think maybe X, Y, Z is something that you might want to just look at. Right. Don't enforce your ideas upon someone. Just maybe make some suggestions as to kind of the things that you didn't think were maybe such a good idea. But I think in the modern world, with things like online self-publishing, the world's the oyster now. It really is, because there's people with amazing talent, great imaginations, love of the world that they're in and that they develop, and they can get it out there to gamers around the world. And I think that's brilliant. That's awesome, man. So are you would you be interested, I don't know how long we're going to, how many episodes. I kind of made a joke last time when we recorded, because Caleb seems very intent on murdering us all, and I was like, well, if it only takes a couple minutes to gen a character, then I guess it's going to be like, and now the monster turns around and there's a new group of adventurers ready to fight him. You know what I mean? Like, and so I would imagine we'll try to. I'm not quite sure how it's set up, but I imagine we'll try to do a story or a whole module or whatever it is, however you have it set up. So at least we get through like a kind of a whole thing. But would you be interested in listening to those and then coming back on afterwards and kind of giving us some feedback? Yeah, definitely so. Definitely. And then, because if we approach something wrong, you can go, I mean, I don't know if that's possible, but you go, oh, maybe you misunderstood this rule, or this is actually what this meant, but that sort of thing. Oh, yeah, definitely so. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I mean, it's the really nice thing, I think, is seeing something that you've created being used. That's the great thing, and coming up with a game that people are actually playing and enjoying is really sort of deeply sort of rewarding on a spiritual and philosophical level and all those kind of things. You know?
Yeah. Also, it's a nice ego boost.
Hey, listen, I think back in the day, I would have definitely taken the ego boost.
Yeah.
It definitely brings a sort of a warmer feeling to the day, kind of thing.
They're playing it. They're doing this thing that I made.
That's right. That's the really nice bit. That's the really cool bit. And when I've had sort of feedback from people in some of the games that they've run, I thought that's really cool. I like that. I'm happy.
Yeah, I think we might actually try to get all three of the guys here next time with me after we've played. So then, they can
awesome.
Ask questions and pick your brain as well. So it'll be a 5-person conversation.
It's going to be interesting to see what kind of adventures you go for, because I mean, especially with the third book, there's just so many sort of plot hooks. Where is the ship going?
Yeah.
A graveyard of ships in search of one that only pretends to have sunk. That's one potential. I mean, the options are so great that I'm really excited to see what kind of game you guys play.
Yeah, and once again, I don't know how long we're gonna play because I'm not, because Caleb has all the books, so sure. I know we're gonna definitely try to play enough of it to where we can get to a conclusion, just from the perspective of. Well, because it's a podcast, it's a show, so
cool, yeah,
so we definitely want to put in some time on it, and plus it gives me more time to read those stupid books.
Brilliant, I hear that. Yeah.
Hey, look, stupid D&D books.
Pathfinder. Yeah. At least I'm not asking you to read the Pathfinder book. You know that thing that is.
Oh, well, Dave, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Thanks for talking to us and our listeners. And all of his information is in the show notes, people. So find him, go to Lulu. Get the book, start playing the game, message him on Facebook, tell him what you liked. If you're going to tell him what you didn't like, don't be a jerk about it. That's all I'm asking you. All right, so for Chaotic Amateurs, I've been Bentley Michaels. Grab your sword and keep on adventuring.
Follow us across all platforms with Chaotic Amateurs. Please subscribe, rate, and review our show on your podcast app of choice to help us climb the charts and find new adventurers. Or become a patron on Patreon to help our heroes continue their quest. Thank you for listening to Chaotic Amateurs.